I shouldn't have lingered, but I did. Maybe it was the way the silence stretched, or the way her eyes caught mine and didn't let go. Whatever it was, I knew I was already too far in. Her kitchen was small, warmer than I expected, smelling faintly of brewed coffee and something floral. Maybe her perfume clinging to the curtains. I was supposed to just help her fix the cabinet hinge. Nothing more. A neighborly favor. That's all. But the way she stood there, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed, watching me work, it didn't feel like just a favor. Felt like something waiting to be named. She's in her mid-40s, though you wouldn't know it if you saw her laugh. There's this softness that lingers in the corners of her mouth, a kind of tired beauty you can't fake. I caught myself staring too long when she bent slightly to hand me the screwdriver, her hand brushing mine. Just an accident. But my grip tightened around the tool as if it meant more. "You're quieter than usual," she said, her tone half playful, half probing. I swallowed, pretending to focus on the hinge. "Just concentrating. Don't want to break your cabinet." Her laugh was low, private, like she didn't share it with many people anymore. "It's already broken. You can't make it worse." I should have smiled and left it there. Instead, I looked up, and our eyes locked again. Too long, too steady. Her lips parted slightly, then pressed together as if she caught herself. I turned back to the hinge, but my hands were clumsy now. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was charged. A clock ticked on the wall. Outside, the afternoon had grown heavy, rain pressing against the windows. It was the kind of sound that made you want to stay, even when you shouldn't. I tightened the last screw and stood, brushing dust from my hands. She was closer than before. I hadn't noticed her moving. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice slower, heavier. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," I answered, almost too quickly. She tilted her head, studying me. Her gaze wasn't casual anymore. It lingered, like she was seeing something she shouldn't admit. The silence stretched, and for the first time I couldn't fill it. "I shouldn't be doing this," she whispered. My throat tightened. "Neither should I." Her eyes widened, just for a second, as if I had said the thing she'd been holding back. She turned away, running a hand through her hair, a nervous gesture that betrayed more than words could. The room felt smaller, the air thick. I stepped closer, not enough to touch her, but enough that she could feel I hadn't left. She leaned on the counter, her shoulders tense, her fingers gripping the edge like it was the only thing keeping her steady. "This feels different," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "Because it is," I replied. The rain outside intensified, beating against the glass in a rhythm that matched the pulse in my ears. She turned her head slightly, her profile outlined by the dim light from the window. For a moment, neither of us moved. Just the rain, the clock, and the weight of everything unsaid pressing between us. Then, as if pulled by something inevitable, her hand slipped from the counter and brushed against mine. Just a graze, but enough to make my chest tighten. She didn't pull away. And that's when I knew this was no longer just a neighborly favor. It was the beginning of something I couldn't take back. I should have left right then. That would have been the smart thing to do. Thank her for the coffee she hadn't even offered yet, wipe my hands, and step back out into the rain. But I didn't move. She hadn't moved either. Her hand still lingered close to mine, not quite touching now, but near enough that the space between us felt alive. I told myself it was nothing, just a neighbor grateful for a repair, but that lie was already too thin to stand on. She finally exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for too long. "I'm sorry," she said, almost to herself. Things have been messy. Messy. The word hung there, carrying more than she probably intended to reveal. I wanted to ask, but I didn't. Instead, I studied her in the dim light, the faint lines at the edges of her eyes, the way her sweater slipped slightly off one shoulder. She wasn't polished like the girls my age. She was real, imperfect, and in that imperfection there was something magnetic. Messy how? I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine, then down to the countertop. She ran her finger in a slow line over the wood grain. The divorce isn't final yet, she said quietly. It's been months, but it still feels raw. Something shifted in me then. I shouldn't have known this. I shouldn't have been the one she told. But now that I did, it felt like a door opening where there hadn't been one before. I nodded, pretending not to feel the weight of her trust. I get it, I said softly. That's a lot to carry. She laughed without humor. You're too young to understand. Maybe she was right, but her words hit deeper than I expected. Too young. It wasn't the first time I'd felt the sting of being dismissed by age. But from her, it was different. She wasn't trying to belittle me. She was trying to protect herself. Still, I couldn't stop noticing the way her voice softened when she spoke, or how she avoided looking directly at me when the conversation got close to something raw. I couldn't stop thinking about the faint scent of her perfume clinging to the air between us, or the way her hand trembled just slightly when she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. I wanted to say something reckless then, to tell her she wasn't alone, that I couldn't stop thinking about her since the day we first met in the stairwell, when she dropped her grocery bag and I bent down to help. But my throat closed around the words. Instead, I shifted my weight, ready to step away, to end it before it became too much. But then she spoke again. Don't go yet. My chest tightened. Her hand reached out, hesitating for only a second before resting lightly on my arm. Her touch was warm, steady, far too intimate for what we were supposed to be. I looked at her, really looked, and for a moment the rain outside, the ticking clock, the rest of the world, it all faded. There was only her hand on my arm, and the words I almost said but didn't. Not yet. Her hand was still on my arm when the sound broke through, the shrill vibration of her phone rattling against the counter. She flinched, pulling back quickly, like the touch had been a mistake. I almost reached for her hand again, but stopped myself, my palm flexing uselessly at my side. She glanced at the screen, her jaw tightening before she flipped the phone face down without answering. That tiny act told me everything. Whoever it was, she didn't want to explain me or this to them. The silence that followed was louder than the ring. I should get going, I murmured, though I didn't move. She shook her head, almost desperate. No, just stay a little longer. Please. The word please landed heavy, like it carried more weight than she wanted it to. My chest tightened, caught between the pull of her voice and the alarm bells in my head. This was dangerous. She was still unraveling from a marriage not yet behind her, and I was, what? A neighbor? A kid? A distraction she'd regret? But then she looked at me, and it didn't feel like any of those things. It felt like I was the only one she trusted in this moment. I took a step closer, close enough to see the small freckle just below her collarbone, the faint rise and fall of her breath. My hand almost lifted. Almost. But I stopped myself, fingers curling tight against my palm. You don't have to say anything, she whispered. I just don't want to be alone right now. The honesty in her voice nearly undid me. I wanted to pull her into my arms, to say all the things I'd been swallowing since that first night in the stairwell. But I knew if I opened that door, I wouldn't be able to close it again. So instead, I said, I'm here, and let the words hang between us, heavier than any declaration. Her eyes softened, and for a moment, I thought she might step into me. Instead, she brushed past, reaching for the kettle on the stove. The small movement of her shoulder grazing mine felt louder than the rain outside. The kettle clicked, steam curling upward. She poured water into 2 cups, her hands steady now, as if the simple act of making tea could disguise everything else. Then another knock, sharp, unexpected, at the door. She froze. We stared at each other, caught in the sudden intrusion. My pulse hammered. Was it him? The soon-to-be ex-husband? A friend who'd ask too many questions? Her lips parted like she might explain, but she didn't. Instead, she placed one of the steaming cups into my hand, her fingers brushing mine deliberately this time, holding just a second too long. "Don't say anything," she whispered, her voice trembling. The knock came again, harder this time. Her hand didn't leave mine, and in that moment her touch warm, the door unanswered, the world pressing in from outside. I couldn't help but wonder if we had already crossed the line without meaning to. The knock faded, leaving only the echo of it in the small kitchen. Neither of us moved. The tea in my hand was already cooling, but the warmth of her fingers still lingered, stronger than the steam rising from the cup. She finally exhaled, shaky, and turned her face away. I should answer it," she said, though her body stayed rooted to the spot. "You don't have to," I replied, softer than I intended. That made her look at me, really look. Her eyes weren't just tired now. They were bare, stripped of the armor she'd been holding up all this time. "You don't understand," she whispered. I swallowed. "Then tell me." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she set her cup down and pressed both palms flat against the counter as if bracing herself. Her shoulders rose and fell with a breath that sounded heavier than anything the rain outside could carry. "I haven't let anyone in since he left," she said finally, her voice breaking at the edges. "Not even my closest friends. And now here you are. And I don't know why I'm letting you." Her confession hit me like a punch. It wasn't just the honesty. It was the way her voice cracked on the word "you." I put my cup down too, the porcelain clinking against the counter. My hands itched to reach for her, to hold her steady, but I stayed where I was. If I touched her now, I wouldn't stop. "You don't have to explain," I said carefully. "I get it." But she shook her head. "No, you don't. You're too young. You don't know what it feels like to lose the life you thought you'd have. To wake up every morning and wonder if anyone will ever really see you again." Her voice cracked again, and that was it. The restraint I'd been clinging to snapped. "You think I don't see you?" My words came out sharper than I meant, but I couldn't take them back. "I see everything. The way you try to smile when it doesn't reach your eyes. The way you carry the weight of everything alone. I notice it every damn day." Her eyes widened, and the silence that followed was deafening. My chest was heaving, like I'd just run, and all I could do was wait for her reaction. She stepped closer, one, then another, until there was barely a hand's breadth between us. I could smell the faint trace of jasmine from her hair, see the tiny scar near her temple I'd never noticed before. Her hand lifted, hovering near my chest, but she didn't touch me. "Not yet." "This is wrong," she whispered, but her voice was trembling. "Tell me to stop." I should have. Every nerve in my body screamed that I should. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I met her eyes and held them, the silence between us so heavy it felt like it might break me in half. And then, in that unbearable quiet, she asked the question that changed everything. "Do you want this as much as I do?" Her question lingered in the air like smoke. "Do you want this as much as I do?" My throat was tight, words stuck. When the sound broke it, her phone buzzing again, louder this time, insistent. She flinched, grabbed it from the counter, and this time she didn't flip it over. She answered. "Hello." Her voice wavered, her back to me now. I couldn't hear the words on the other end, but I saw her shoulders tense, her free hand clenching at her side. She nodded once, then again, murmured something low, and ended the call. When she turned, her face had changed. She looked cornered. "That was my daughter," she said, her voice fragile. I blinked. She'd never mentioned a daughter before. "She's coming by tomorrow, to help me pack the last of his things." Her fingers gripped the edge of the counter. She can't know about this. About us." "Us," she said. The word lodged in my chest like a spark catching flame. She'd named it even if she didn't mean to. But the twist of it, the weight of someone else stepping into this tangled line, made my pulse stumble. Why didn't you tell me? Her eyes filled with something sharp, fear, maybe shame. Because I didn't plan for this to happen. You were supposed to be just... She stopped, biting her lip hard. Just what? My voice cracked louder than I meant. Just a kind gesture. A neighbor who helps when things fall apart. She met my eyes now, raw and unguarded. Not the only person who makes me feel alive again. The words hit like a storm. Beautiful. Devastating. I should have felt triumphant, but instead, I felt the ground shifting. She wasn't only fighting the ghost of her ex. She was fighting herself, her daughter, the entire life she'd built. And I was standing in the middle, unable to step out. You think she wouldn't understand? I asked, my voice softer now. She'd hate me, she whispered, for moving on so fast. For moving on with you. Her fear wasn't of being alone. It was of being seen in the wrong way by the person she loved most. That realization burned through me, sudden and clear. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Then don't call it moving on. Call it what it is. Her breath caught. And what's that? The words hovered on my tongue. I almost said love. But the word felt too fragile. Too big for this narrow kitchen and the storm beating against the glass. So instead I said, real. Her eyes softened, shimmering in the dim light, and for a second I thought she'd cry. She didn't. She just pressed her hand flat against my chest, over my heart, and left it there like it was the only truth she could hold on to. We stayed like that, my hand almost covering hers, the silence stretching, the air between us trembling, until finally she whispered, tomorrow changes everything. And I knew she was right. The night bled into silence after her words. Tomorrow changes everything. It sat between us like a wall we couldn't climb, and yet neither of us moved away. Her hand was still on my chest, steady but trembling, like she wasn't sure if she wanted to hold me there or push me back. I covered her hand with mine. She looked up, eyes wide, uncertain. I should have said something simple, it's okay. I understand. But the truth pressed against my ribs, demanding to be spoken. I can't pretend this is nothing, I said, my voice low, almost hoarse. Every time I see you, it feels like I'm standing on the edge of something I can't walk away from. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. I saw it in her eyes though, the same pull, the same fear. You make me feel like I'm too much, she whispered, pulling her hand back. Too old, too broken. And still, her voice cracked, raw. Still, I can't tell you to leave. My chest tightened. I wanted to erase the years between us, the past she carried, the weight she thought made her unworthy. But I couldn't. All I could do was stand there, aching with the truth. I don't care about the rules or what anyone thinks, I said, louder now, my hands tightening at my sides. I just care that it's you, that it's always been you since the first moment I stopped, the confession choking me before I could say the word. She shook her head, her breath shaky. You shouldn't say it. Why not? Because if you do, I'll believe you. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was unbearable, filled with everything neither of us dared to finish. I stepped closer, until our foreheads almost touched. Her breath warmed my skin, shallow, uncertain. I mean it, I whispered. Every word. Her eyes closed, lashes damp, and for the first time, she let herself lean into me. Her forehead pressed lightly against mine. A surrender so small yet so absolute it made my chest ache. We stood there, holding on to nothing but each other, the rain outside washing against the glass like a heartbeat. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Then promise me one thing. Anything. Don't let me regret this. The weight of it settled in me, heavier than any declaration of love could have been. It wasn't poetry. It was fear, honesty, and trust. all tangled together. And it was real. I pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, to let her see that I wasn't running. I won't. For a moment, the world stilled, the rain, the ticking clock, even the ache of tomorrow waiting at the door. There was only her, and the unshakable truth that nothing would ever be the same again. And in that fragile silence, she finally closed the distance between us. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the weight of what we'd done lingered in the stillness. Light crept through the curtains in thin, pale lines, and for a moment, it felt like the world was holding its breath with us. She sat across from me at the small kitchen table, her coffee untouched, her fingers wrapped around the cup just for something to hold. I watched her, the way her eyes drifted toward the window, toward a tomorrow she knew was coming. "Your daughter's coming," I said quietly. She nodded. "She'll ask questions." A pause. "I'll have to answer them." The words should have filled me with dread, but they didn't. Not anymore. We'd already crossed the line. Pretending otherwise would have been a lie, and what had just passed between us wasn't built on lies. It was raw, messy, imperfect, but it was real. "You don't have to hide from me," I told her. "Not anymore." Her lips curved, not quite a smile but something softer. "You don't make it easy to walk away." I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. "Then don't." The silence that followed wasn't heavy like before. It was different now, less fear, more possibility. She finally met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw not just the exhaustion of her past but the flicker of something new. "Hope. I thought I was done with this part of myself," she said, voice low. "That no one would ever look at me the way you do. And yet here you are, seeing me when I've forgotten how." My throat tightened, but I didn't look away. "I see you, all of you, and I'm not going anywhere." Her hand slipped across the table, hesitating for only a second before brushing against mine. This time I didn't wait. I caught it, held it, felt her fingers curl against my palm like they belonged there. We stayed like that. Two people who shouldn't have found each other, who had every reason to turn away and yet didn't. When the knock finally came later that morning, softer than the night before, she didn't flinch. She squeezed my hand instead. "Whatever happens next," she whispered, "don't let me face it alone." I nodded, and for the first time I didn't feel like the younger one in the room. I felt steady, certain. Never. The world outside was still waiting. Her daughter, her unfinished past, the whispers of judgment. But inside that kitchen, we'd already made our choice. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was ours. And maybe that was enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?